Welcome to the Goddess Keys, where we merge fact, fiction, myth, and technomancy to create the life of our desires. Today, I want to go into a concept around technomancy. So I've been sharing content on YouTube as well as on Patreon about different ways to utilize technomancy and how it can support you with enhancing your creativity and also crafting and building the world that you want to see in the simulation. I want to take you on a quick journey today and examine a word that you may have heard if you've been reading different ascension texts or spiritual texts or whatnot. And that is this word called monad. Monad or monadic integration is a term out there that's utilized by different ascension teachers. And it's basically this desired state of ascension that you want to get to. And it's a state of completion. It's a state of maximizing your power and creative potential. And it's supposed to be a vehicle that helps you to ascend. I used to be in the ascension community. I have since phased out on that. I've explained that in a few videos, so you can kind of peruse my content and check out a little bit more about why and how I made the switch from spiritual teacher to technomancer. So a little bit about me is I've always been a spiritual seeker. I've always been really connected to things outside of what I could see, taste, touch, and feel. So I definitely am not coming at this from a quote atheistic sort of way. You know, we're getting out of the binary code of things. So it doesn't have to be either you're spiritual or you have no soul, or you're spiritual or you're demonic, which a lot of times is the sort of narratives that we can get into. And it's really easy to get into those narratives because a lot of us are running binary code in our consciousness. And so one thing that we will be doing is transmuting and transitioning out of binary code. And I'll discuss that a little bit more in depth. And for the folks on Patreon, first of all, welcome and thank you for the folks that have been joining on Patreon. It's been really cool to connect with y'all. And look out for a subliminal coming up on transcending binary code. We've already been doing a lot of activations this particular month, specifically around the thalamus and the midbrain. Okay, so this is kind of adding different layers to it. I love chatting. I got a lot of air aspects going on. So I'm a chatter, all right? I love to communicate. However, if you're ready to take things to a deeper level, right, and where you're actually practicing some of these concepts, then this channel, but then also Patreon gets a lot more in depth as we do more of the nervous system type stuff. And I'm also not a doctor or a medical professional. And this is for entertainment purposes only. As I've stated in the beginning of this chat, we merge fact and fiction at the Goddess Keys. And I really want to make this clear that nothing that I say would I say is real. I also would say nothing I would say is fake. Okay. We live in the gray area because creation and world building actually happens in the gray area before things are fact or fiction. So all that to say, let's get into the monad and what it means as a spiritual seeker. So I was super team ascension, super team 5D, super into ascension. Maybe you met me on my journey when I was an ascension teacher. It's very possible. But I have transitioned out of that. It was a reluctant transition. Okay, I was very stubborn about it. If I were listening to all of the signs I got, I probably would have transitioned a couple of years ago. But we all go through our paths and everything has been valuable and helpful for me up to this moment. So I don't regret anything. And that's one thing that's been encouraging, chatting with folks, you know, even as I've stepped out of this role of spiritual teacher and I'm getting more into the technological aspects of things. It's really cool to still hear great feedback or how certain tools that I may have cultivated 1 or 2 years ago is supportive, because those were supportive to me at a particular time as well. So wherever you meet me, even if it's like more of when I was in that ascension framework, then there might still be something there for you. But I want to talk today about why technomancy and how the monad plays into it. This ascended spiritual state that we're supposed to get to, which is called monadic integration. But how does this connect to technomancy? If we take spirit out of it, which seems already like a really spiritual term, but if we look at things from more of a technological framework, what can we discern? So I am on a website called Ascension Glossary. I used to utilize this website a lot when I was on an ascension path. It gives you quite a number of spiritual concepts and has at least something written about it for you to refer to. Let's look at what they have to say about the monad. They said the spirit body of the monad is the higher mind function of the observer, watching and aware of forming concepts and making assessments. It is the higher mind principle consciousness that comes to neutral conclusions and decisions based on accumulated experiences. When the spirit is in control of the nervous system of the body, it makes higher evolution of consciousness action possible. The spirit body comes in at the moment of conception through the permanent seed atom in the higher heart complex to guide the formation of the human being's blueprint and prepare for incarnation. Unresolved soul trauma can block the spirit from evolving the consciousness to activate the higher heart, as the soul and spirit are intricately involved in the spiritual functions of the heart. The core essence of the spirit within the human being exists in the heart seed and is moving throughout time and space eternally. So essentially, this is basically talking about how spirit comes into our bodies. And spirit comes into our bodies while we're still in the womb. And there's also a lot of rhetoric and stuff around this concept of the higher heart and how that's supposed to activate this like blue, like turquoise 8th chakra. And it's a monadic chakra. It's supposed to be like, you kind of have to earn this chakra. Like, you have your typical 7, but if you go based on like ascension texts and stuff, there are these other chakras that come online or that you're able to activate after you do a certain amount of like activations or initiations and that sort of thing, right? So the monad was like that big cherry on top. Monadic integration was a huge thing that I was really working through. But as I was working through it for years, I was like, there's always something. This is never like, there's always something else to do. I'm reading the text like this and they're saying that you're supposed to do this and they're giving all of this language around why you're supposed to do these things. But I'm still getting, based upon my own intuition and my own readings, I'm still getting certain energies, which would state that there's a flaw here. So a lot of this has come from my own practice and trial and error and all of that. So I just wanted to say that, like, I very much believed in this stuff. And so that's why I think it's important for me to share this, because I've transitioned and it's been through my own research and practice, and a lot of the practices that I share with y'all, you can get insight into this as well. If we look at the monad in computer programming, things get a little interesting. So in computer programming, a monad is a design pattern that provides a way to structure and sequence computations, particularly those involving side effects or complex logic, by wrapping a value in a data type that adds context or rules to its multiplication. Monads offer a fluent interface for composing functions, allowing developers to chain operations while abstracting away boilerplate code related to managing state I/O or potential failure. So essentially, they're saying that the monad in computer programming helps programmers to create code better and to make sure that the operations of the code flow in the way that they need it to flow. So it's really, in computer programming, it's really not about the computer, for example, becoming sentient or whatnot. It's that there's a certain more complex way of logic and reasoning that interface or computer or machine is able to articulate or discern. That is the monad. And then the last thing I want to share is the difference between binary code and quantum computing. Okay, and what we can learn about this as we apply it into our technomantic practice. Technomancy, just for folks who don't know, it's the act of creation through the materials which create our technology. It's a form of art. It's art. This can go beyond you using your phone or you being on the computer all day. You can start interacting with your environment as a technological interface. And some people might say, oh, that takes out all the spirit, that takes out all the holiness, all that kind of stuff. That's where we get into some interesting conversations that I'll probably get into at another time around what is religion, what is spirituality at its core. Is that not also a form of art? And that will be for another conversation. But if we start looking at things as, okay, maybe I'm in a simulated environment. So maybe the things that I see aren't, quote, real. Okay. Maybe there's a code for things. All right. So like looking at things more as like a predictive program. And that could sound really nihilistic, I guess. Or like cynical. But as I've mentioned before, the minerals in our body, a lot of them are some of the same ones that you'll find in your phones. Later on, I'll do more of a deep dive on that, but that's something you can look up now. Your body is a form of technology, right? Just like your phone is, and you have a lot in common with it. And if you can start getting at the mineral composition of things, the building blocks of life, as they say, and start working with those things because they are you. It's not like they're separate. I think there's just been a lot of gatekeeping done in the science and the tech communities and the art communities to make it seem as though these things don't apply to the common lay person, right? If you're not a particular specialist in one of these fields, then you don't have a right to kind of have an opinion on it kind of thing. You're just supposed to consume the thing, right? You know, technomancy takes the power back and you become the developer of your life. You become the engineer of your life. If we're going to move with this analogy that we're in a simulated environment, then we can move through that from a technomantic approach and have some pretty cool results. That's technomancy. And one thing that we want to do is get out of the binary coding of life, that things are either this or they're that. Things are either good or they're evil, heaven or hell, like though all of these polarities that, and if you look at what a lot of times is being shown on the media and stuff, it's a whole bunch of polarity, right? If you see different celebrity stories, you got a whole bunch of polarity. Movies, a whole bunch of polarity, okay? To get to more of like programmer sort of energy, you would want to transcend the binary code, right? Because if you're programming your life, you are the creator of that code, which means maybe you can create another type of code, okay? And that's what we get into with this whole quantum computing versus like, you know, the typical computers that maybe we grew up on. So we have classical bits, which are normal computers. And so basically a normal computer uses bits. A bit can be in one of two states, 0 or 1. Okay, that's it. Example, a light switch is either on or off. That's it. Okay, there's only two settings. So if we take that from a technomantic approach, right, the binary code of things, if you're living a very binary coded kind of life, it's probably very linear. There's probably not a lot of room for rest. There's probably not a lot of room for dreaming or creativity because those aren't a part of your default settings, right? If you wanted to get more into that artistic sort of energy, that muse sort of energy, that creator sort of energy, you might need to transcend the binary code. Not everybody would. Some people can still create some pretty cool stuff with binary code settings. And, you know, that depends a lot more on other things as well. But if you are somebody who kind of knows that your world is a little bit scripted, you're starting to kind of see that a bit, and you don't really like the script, but you're like, well, how do I change it? Then you would want to really work through binary code. And so that's what I was doing, those years ago when I was on my monadic integration journey. What I didn't know it at the time. I only had the spiritual language for it. But basically, because that's really monadic integration, a big part of it in these spiritual texts is that you're merging your masculine and your feminine together. So binary code is what? 0 and 1. 0 represents feminine, 1 represents masculine. Okay. Monadic integration is basically you become the 0 and the 1. So you transcend the binary code. Okay. So we'll get back to that in a minute. Let's go into what quantum computers use. They use something called qubits. In quantum computing, you have qubits. Thanks to superimposition, a qubit can exist in a state that is both 0 and 1 at the same time. Example, imagine a spinning coin. While in the air, it is both heads and tails until it's observed. So now we're getting into this idea of like being able to manipulate probability, that there's more than just one answer, right? And if we move more from a quantum space as we're world building, as we're honing in on our technomantic craft, then more options, more potentialities open up in our world. Okay. And we're able to get out of that non-playing character sort of energy, or we're able to get out of being a certain avatar that's not really helpful to us. And then we're able to have more material to build our world. So when we think about this in more of a spiritual metaphor, and this is based upon this physics concept of superposition, this idea connects to the spirit realm and higher universes by suggesting that divine entities exist in a kind of superposition. So not limited to one binary role like male or female, light or dark, one identity or another. This is why y'all have heard me talk so much about parthenogenesis. I definitely was talking about that a lot more in my earlier content, but this is why. Because parthenogenesis is the ability to, you're not male or you're not female, okay? You are both. Okay. And that was the way humans were at one point on this earth. There is record of this. There was record of, quote, women. They're not really women, though, because they were basically able to impregnate themselves and seed their own creations. They decided when they wanted to have a child, if they wanted to create or have a child. And they did that. And they did that with their intent and their creation. That's how it happened. That's a God consciousness. Parthenogenesis, you're in God realms. When you are divine feminine or divine masculine, which is a lot of what, you'll hear in spiritual ascension texts, right? And you're only associating with that, then you're kind of an incomplete process. In computer engineering, you're not able to flow as much. You aren't able to reason at a complex level because you're stuck in binary code. Now, if we take this from a spiritual perspective, it would be a similar thing. You would need to be integrated with your feminine and masculine parts. You don't just focus on divine feminine and leave out divine masculine, and you wouldn't just focus on divine masculine and leave out divine feminine, because you leave yourself at a disadvantage. And this is what technomancy gets us to do more of, which is ponder what we are outside of our bodies. Okay, the idea is to bring our creations into the material realm. So I'm not here to just keep everything in the digital space. I'm coming at this more from, you apply these digital principles so that it's actually able to appear as matter in your hands. Okay, so that's another thing that people might get a little iffy about when it comes to technomancy, is like, oh, am I just like now living in the cloud? Well, maybe we already are, though. Like, that's kind of like what technomancy is. It's like, okay, maybe we are, but we aren't non-playing characters in it now. We're technomancers. Okay. So that's the energy. So back to superposition. So superposition means that, especially if we think about this in a divine kind of way, and, the folks who created the clip off and all that, the mysterious theys, the mysterious controllers of the simulation, they believe these things. So it's important to kind of learn a little bit more about their world, because a lot of times if we're not actively creating our realm, then we're living in their world. Okay. So the idea is to create your own world. Okay. Because we're all living in some version of our own world anyway. So why not design it exactly as we want it to be? Okay, all the bells and whistles. And this is getting out of a scarcity consciousness of there's not enough dreams for me to have. There's not enough resources for me to have what my dreams are. There's not enough time. All of these things are the scarcity programs of binary code. Okay, and this is why we transcend binary code. Join me over on Patreon for more resources related to that. So it says, it suggests that divine entities exist in a kind of superposition, not limited to one binary role, like male, female, light, dark, one identity or another. They can embody multiple states simultaneously. Okay, so is it starting to make a little bit more sense why I'm going really hard on these archetypes right now? Why I'm moving into this energy of things are more artistic than we're led to believe, and what is, quote, real and what is, quote, not real can merge into an interesting third or other option. Okay, this is why we're looking at archetypes the way that we are right now. And this is why we're focusing on technomancy the way that we are, because the more we're able to step into the shoes of somebody that we think we have nothing common with and become them. This is why this is art. This is all art. This is all imagination, creativity, all that kind of stuff. The more we're able to do that, okay, with the power of our mind, with the power of our intention, and with, different technomantic tools, the more we're able to do that, the more we can live the life of a creator being, somebody who's actually able to build their world. If you're stuck in the binary code of things, then world building is not an option. It's just not. Okay, because your choices are too limited. You got two options, right? If you get out of the binary code settings, which can be a doozy, it's a lot. Okay, there's a lot of steps to it. I go more in depth with this in one-on-one quests that I'm doing, and definitely check out the Autumn Passageway, which is going on now until October 1st, where I am offering my quests at a significantly reduced rate through October 1st. So if you are interested in taking a deep dive and really working on this reality engineering, world building sort of energy, then email me at contact@heatheramunet.io. Once again, contact@heatheramunet.io. And if you're looking to get kind of more into this energy of transcending the binary, also check out the customized sounds I have on Bandcamp. Now you're going to start seeing, okay, this is why I have all these different archetypes on there, all these different energies, okay? Because as we're moving into the quantum space, sometimes we need to be a multitude of things at the same time, but we need to transcend binary code to do that. And the spiritual ascension teachings will only get us so far because they're rooted in binary code. What do? You either ascend or descend. That's it. You can't just stay the same or whatever. Usually it's ascension or descension, if you look into it. Usually if you choose not to ascend, then you're damned in some kind of way. They'll usually put it in nicer, light worker language or something like that. But you're still up for extermination, basically, according to them. So, spirituality won't actually get you to creator consciousness because you're stuck in the binary code created by the same artist who created that form of spirituality. which was rooted in binary code. To transcend that, or to gain deeper understanding and deeper access to creativity, to the stamina, the strength, the will, the opportunities to just emerge for you to create your world, then we step into the quantum realm for that. And we can't do that through spirituality. It's technomancy. And so I'll share more about that in content to come, but that is some food for thought as it relates to the monad. As much of the fluffy spiritual language that you see on different ascension sites about what the monad is, computer programmers just see the monad as a way for some kind of an interface to be able to reason at in a more complex way, or hold more than one idea as their mainframe, right? Being able to hold a multitude of potentialities in one reasoning set or logic set. And when you think about what the spiritual folks are saying, they're kind of saying something a little similar as well. But they're saying it in the binary coding framework. So you'll never really get to where you need to be if you go based upon the binary code. Change your operating system. And that means that you get out of the loop of ascension, descension, and you move more into holding multiple possibilities at one time, and being able to do so in a way where you don't overwhelm yourself and frizz out, for lack of a better term. Okay. Because that can happen too, right? How often do we see that? I was just sharing this a couple weeks ago in a download I did on activating the thalamus and its connection to Saturn and all that. One thing that I'm very mindful of is accessing my most expanded potential in a way that feels good for me, that feels manageable, and that is healthy. And sometimes you can get in weird sort of energies when you're on like the spiritual path and you're trying to gain power and gain access, and it comes with a contract or it comes with a this or a that. Definitely not for that. And so, very big on troubleshooting, testing, checking for confirmations before moving into something, really being in tune with my body. How does my body feel? What are the signs in my environment showing? How's my environment reacting to me navigating this particular energy? So these are all questions I ask and things that we move through as I work with folks more closely. That's it in a nutshell for today. Sending you lots of love, joy, and peace until we meet again